Today, I'm going to talk about an altcoin that basically every single major VC is accumulating and is investing in. I'm also going to run through what just happened with the Fed overnight with the FOMC meeting and the 75 basis point rate hike. Does this mean that we're going to rally? Does this mean we're going to come back down? I'm going to answer all those questions in today's video and go over one of the coins that all the VCs are very interested in, including SBF, who made one of the biggest bets of his investing career through FTX over the last few weeks. So let's get straight into the show because it is a massive one, massive day. Honestly, I'm feeling some hopium right now. I feel like I've just injected myself with hopium because I woke up feeling a little bit bullish. Now, we shouldn't let the market dictate our mood, but I'll be honest, with the 100 BPS avoided, that certainly alleviated some stress I was feeling because that was a possibility that we wanted to avoid. The meeting, I don't know if it was just me, but I did notice a slightly dovish undertone. It didn't seem too hawkish, which is obviously one of the major things investors look out for. It's how does Powell actually approach these topics? Is he dovish? Is he hawking, alluding to crazy rate hikes? I felt like there was a slight dovish undertone, probably one of the reasons why the markets are pumping right now. The Fed actually takes August off now. So there's no rate hike decision on the 25th of August. The next FOMC is actually 55 days away in September, and we have Bitcoin breaking resistance right now. So I kind of feel like August could be a good month. Look, I don't like being so bullish in the overall macro bear trend, but I just got to be honest with you guys all the time. I'm feeling like August might be a good month. That's just honestly how I'm feeling, given that 55 days is until the next FOMC meeting. But I just kind of want to clarify this for a second because I did tweet about it this morning. I said 75 basis points is not inherently bullish. So that's one caveat. Two, the unlikely possibility of a 100 BPS hike was avoided, and we know that the market hates uncertainty. So the reason we got this rally overnight is because the market hates uncertainty, and there was roughly a 20% chance that 100 BPS occurs. Now, that was alleviated, so that was eradicated for the market, which gave the green light for a little bounce. And with the Fed taking August off, I think a lot of investors believe, probably myself included, that there's little in the way of change for the next stretch. Meaning we may have a more stable month, obviously from a rate hike perspective, because there's no FOMC for another 55 days, which means there's just a little bit of breathing room. Now, we haven't had breathing room in quite some time. The last couple of months have been jam-packed with dates. In fact, this week is still jam-packed with dates with FOMC, with GDP and Apple tomorrow. But after that, after this week, there may just be a little more clarity. I know the market loves to just chuck things at us left, right, and center, but there just seems like there's a little bit of breathing room. There's a little bit of space now for the market to actually determine what its trend is. Now, at the moment, obviously over the last day, that trend is up. We can clearly see that on the Bitcoin chart, but the market will make a decision over the next month, ahead of the September rate hikes as to what it wants to do. And with the FOMC coming out slightly dovish today, that just indicates to me that that direction could potentially be upwards. Now, of course, there's downside, and we'll prep for the downside with the charts. There are key levels. If we drop, we flip bearish, of course. But we do know there are also certain levels where we want to trade bullish. And that's just the reality of the charts. We want to trade the charts. We don't want to fight the trend. In terms of our long-term bags, you watched Rand's show last night. You know DCAing is a large component of our portfolios. Personally, I don't love DCAing after pumps. I would much rather DCA after massive dips. And my long-term portfolio, since I'm not selling, I can, I don't need to rush. I don't need to panic in terms of when to buy. I don't need to go too crazy and FOMO in. I can take advantage of dips and not worry about it. So that's the DCA bag. But in terms of the trading bag, well, we want to trade trend. And we can see that Bitcoin, it broke through this area of resistance at 21,700 to 21,900. So that was the first bullish indicator following FOMC. And then we are now approaching range highs. And this key zone is 22,600 to 23,000. Now, this range high is a very, very, very key zone. We need to actually break through this and hold this zone if we want a chance of reclaiming this 24-2 region. Very, very important region now, the 24-2 region. And the only way we get there is through breaking this range high. That's the only way we actually get there at the moment. Now, how can we get there, or do we get rejected? Well, the first chart I have to look at is the DXY, because this is actually on the verge of breaking long-term support. Now, it doesn't have to. It can easily bounce off this level, but on the 4-hourly, there is some major points of confluence right now that the DXY is testing. Firstly, we got rejected off the 50 and 100 EMAs. And then secondly, we have bounced off this diagonal support line on the 4-hourly. Thirdly, we have confluence of the 200 MA and the horizontal ray at 105.85. So there's three key levels at the moment that the DXY is fighting. Now, yes, since they're very strong support levels, it can bounce off this. It can definitely bounce off this. However, there is also a possibility that we do break through. And if we did break through, we know that although there is short-term support at 105.8 and 105, we know that the next trend can actually take us right back down to 101. Now, we know a weakening dollar, a weakening DXY means the market is going more risk on. It means money is flowing out of the dollar and into equities. And this would be a signal, the break of this trend, that crypto is about to experience a larger rally. Now, when we speak about a larger rally, we are speaking about a 26 to a 28K Bitcoin. There's actually not much in the way of a 28K Bitcoin. The only real resistance we have right now is like the 24.3. I mean, on the daily, we do have some more resistance with these EMAs. Obviously, you know, we're not going to get to 33, but we can definitely get to 26, which will be in confluence with the 100 MA, potentially a short-term rejection there. So we just have to look a little bit more macro to zoom out a tiny bit. And we do have to take note of the fact that there is not much in the way of 28K right now. And that's not a reason to long. It's certainly not a reason to ape. It's just the reality of what the charts are telling us. And if we are longing, that is our outlook for August. So that is a very large possibility. Now, in the short term, what is Bitcoin going to do? Well, we know short-term moves are a lot harder to dictate than macro moves. But if we do look at the charts right now, we are in a key zone. And we did bounce off the 22.5, which is another key zone. We bounced off the 3 MAs. And those who were lucky enough to take this trade, I think this is one of the best trades of my trading career that I've shared with you live on the show, which is the 20,800. Technically, it wasn't on the show. I'm sorry. It was on Instagram. But you guys know that we go live on Instagram every single day, or I go live every single day after the show to discuss trade setups with you because I don't want to clog the whole show with trading. So the ones that got on that, I'm sure there's some of you in the chat. Congrats, because we are up like 140% now off this trade. We caught the perfect bounce on Bitcoin. We got the rally. I mean, I'm feeling pretty good, and that's why I'm feeling a little hopium today. I feel like I've just injected some hopium because I'm just feeling a little bit bullish after hitting a big trade and getting the 75 BPS. Someone needs to calm me down a little bit. The comments are doing a great job at calming me down. So thank you guys. It's always good to read the comments. It's always a nice calm down. And yeah, that's just, you know, it's always bringing me back to earth and humbling me. But the market is looking up. Look, the important thing to note, and before we all get too carried away right now, we've got GDP tomorrow. That will confirm whether we're in a technical recession or not. The word recession seems to scare the market. So I can't really trust this pump fully. So I'm not entering longs right now because I want some clarity over GDP, firstly. And secondly, we have the Apple earnings, and Apple is the biggest company on the NASDAQ. So that will go a long way to dictating what the NASDAQ actually does. Now, futures are ticking upwards, which is a very obviously bullish sign for equities. However, it's still important to note that if Apple significantly misses earnings, there could be a little pullback. There could be just a little bit of panic. Apple obviously being one of the biggest manufacturer in China, with China, you know, with a lot of lockdown concerns at the moment and supply chain issues, that will kind of give us great insight into whether that problem will extrapolate over the next few months. So the Apple earnings are very important. The GDP is very important. With the recession news, we know how the market loves the word recession at the moment. I think it's one of the most Googled searches at the moment on Google Trends. So we still have 24 hours to kind of weather here. We definitely still have 24 hours to weather, and this means volatility will be high. Although we got a massive pump, there can also be massive dumps and massive candles in between. So like in terms of leverage trading, not that comfortable at the moment, just given that we've just come off a massive pump. But let's set ourselves up for the next month. Let's start thinking of our trading plan for the next month. If the DXY breaks, if Bitcoin breaks past 23, let's start coming up with a plan to actually capitalize on a potential rally. And then let's have clear invalidations so we're not risking too much capital. So I will go over all that on my Instagram after this show. Sounds Tricky's going to join me. We're going to talk through trading strategy because I want to keep this video mostly based on Sam FBF's big bet, which I think is long-term just as important, or, you know, still very important in terms of SBF and FTX's narrative. But we will go live on Instagram afterwards to discuss more about the charts. Remember, if you do want to trade, there's a link in the description to a ByBit account. Going to be a crazy month, August, whether we end up getting a rally or whether we end up getting faked out. Either way, there's going to be volatility. This next month, I feel like from a trading perspective, it's a very pivotal month in crypto with 55 days till the next FOMC. The market could establish some very, very clear trends. So if you don't have a ByBit account, I do think it's a good idea to sign up if you want to trade, of course. Like, it's up to you. If you're not trading, don't worry about it. But if you do want to trade, there's a $4,200 bonus to sign up to a new account. And we also 10x accounts live on the show if you deposit. So yeah, get involved. Link in the description for a ByBit account. But just remember, like, you can still trade spot on ByBit. It's not just leverage trading. You can still buy altcoins, sell altcoins, buy Bitcoin, sell Bitcoin. ByBit has a spot section as well. It's basically like every other exchange in that sense. Just that we're offering the bonus on ByBit because they're one of our official show sponsors. So thanks to ByBit for giving us money to give away. That's always good to give back to the community. And you guys also obviously help support us through those links as well. So it's a win-win. Now, let's get into the major topic of this video, the next Solana, guys, the next Solana. Now, obviously calling something the next Solana, it's a little bit clickbaity because the next Solana would be very hard to predict considering the way the ecosystem developed. It was very, very good tech. It was born in a bull market. It only had $25 million of funding in its Series A, and it still managed to do massive. It still managed to command a massive valuation, and FTX actually got involved. Alameda, Sam didn't even get into the seed round. He bought Solana at like $3, $4 after the seed. The seed was actually 20 to 50 cents. So the original investors are absolutely rolling in cash now. Sam paid a little bit more of a premium. He still did very, very well off the trade, obviously. But the next Solana probably won't look exactly like the next Solana, but this coin has similar backers, and that's why it's in the title of the video. It's got similar backers. It's following a similar narrative. They've actually poached some engineers from Solana, and they've poached some, the head of marketing from Solana actually left and joined this chain, and it kind of is similar in the onset here. And even the CEO of Solana had some good comments to make about this chain, which is interesting, because if they're competitors, why is the CEO talking positively about this chain? I think that's a bullish sign. And then obviously the other major sign is Multicoin Capital. If you guys don't know Multicoin Capital, they were one of the major VCs that first invested in Solana. That was their big win. They actually backed this significantly. They backed this new project. So it has the same investors as Solana. So I think it is reasonable to call it the next Solana. I'm not saying it'll perform the same as Price, but in terms of the way it's kind of framed, I don't think that's too unreasonable. And I want to go through what the project actually is and what it does. Now, you can't buy this project on the open market. So this video is ahead of the curve in the sense that you guys are hearing about this before the ICO, which is good because I'd rather give it to you now and start talking about the narrative behind this now a few months ahead of launch rather than telling you to ape during the ICO and the price rockets. That's just stupid. So let's start positioning ourselves now and talking about it now. And let me give you my opinion now before it's too late. Because that's what I want to do. I want to give you the scoop, the alpha before it hits the market. And to be honest, I spent like 10 hours doing this thread yesterday. So I'm putting in a lot of effort for you guys to try and make sure everyone's ahead of the curve, myself included. And let's get straight into it without a further ado. No, it's not another scam. This is a real project with real backing. Let's get straight into it. It's Aptos. Now, a lot of you guys guessed this in the description. It is Aptos. We had the picture of the token on the thumbnail. Now, it's a new blockchain developed by Aptos Labs. You guys know Sui. Probably heard a little bit about Sui. That is also founded by former Meta Facebook employees. They're two new chains. Sui, which I talked about last week or the week before, and then Aptos, which is the other chain that's kind of like its brother or sister chain, both side by side, both using the same programming language Move, both have basically the same backers, both have very high hopes with their TPS, both are some of the most backed projects in crypto history. Aptos has $350 million of backing. That puts it in top 10 in terms of backing in crypto history. Obviously, Polygon did 450 recently, which was absolutely massive. Obviously, Ethereum and Bitcoin have huge backing. But in the way of altcoins and L1s, $350 million with $2 billion valuations pre-launch is absolutely massive. And we know FTX, Coinbase, A16, Multicoin are all backers of this. Basically, every single major VC is backing Aptos and Sui. But the question is why? And why should you be concerned? Because they're backing. Obviously, they can get in the seed round. From a retail perspective, why should you be concerned? Well, I think it uncovers a narrative that's very interesting in terms of the future of L1s. There's also a bigger discussion here about L1s. But first, I want to go through what Aptos actually is and why you should give a crap, why you should even be watching this video. So I'll go through the tech development funding ecosystem like I did in my thread. Give you some insights into the most important aspects of the thread as well. The first thing to note is that there was a project called Diem. Now, Diem formerly known as Libra, was a payments blockchain system built on Facebook. So Meta or Facebook wanted to build a blockchain. So what they did is they hired a bunch of engineers, some of the smartest engineers around the world, to actually build this blockchain. And they worked on it for 2 years between the year 2020 and 2022. Now, in January 2022, they decided, Facebook said, let's actually scrap the DM blockchain. It's costing a lot of money. We're pivoting in another direction. They already have partnerships with other chains like Matic for their NFTs. So they decided to actually scrap the project. I think it just became a bit too much of a headache for Meta to actually focus on. But what happened was the employees that were working on this project, they still really believed in it. And they worked for years and years on this technology. And they believed in this technology. And they didn't want it to go to waste. So what happened was 2 of the major engineers left and started a new blockchain called Sui, utilizing the technology of Facebook, which they were legally allowed to do when they left Facebook. And then a couple of the other major employees at Facebook, an engineer and a head of development, they left Facebook and started a new blockchain on the same Move platform that they all worked on called Aptos. So the Facebook project, which was originally DM, split into 2 forks, Aptos and Sui. But both of them use the same proprietary programming language called Move that was developed with the Facebook team from 2020 to 2022. So it's split off into 2 forks. And the one I'm talking about today is Aptos. I talked about Sui last week, if you want to check it out. They're both very good. There's differences between the 2, but I think they both go hand in hand. They've got very similar backers. Now, Move is quite an interesting proposition. If you guys don't know, right now, if you want to code on Ethereum, you have to code on Solidity. And you have to use the EVM, which is the Ethereum virtual machine, which is very, very slow. Now, obviously, Ethereum has a path to scalability, but this is still some time away. So they created Move to actually solve some of the key flaws of Solidity and EVM. It was originally designed for Meta, for the DM project, but it's memory safe, quick for dev testing, expressive, home to both the new chains. But I think the most important part is, whilst being fast and expressive, the most impressive part is its security. It's a security-based programming language that is much faster, in some ways easier than Solidity, and a lot of devs were very impressed by it. Now, I'm not a developer. I can't claim to be. I have a little bit of technical knowledge off the back of my research, but I have been speaking to some developers, and they kind of share a consensus that Move is a very, very good programming language. And Ian Move, who is a developer on Move, obviously this is a slightly biased opinion, he says he hasn't met a single person who tried Move and said it's just a gimmick or won't catch on. The only people saying this is a non-dev. That's essentially his point here. So the TLDR of this article, and my thread's in the description in my Twitter, obviously, highly recommend checking it out because it has backlinks to massive pieces of information, which I won't bore you guys with in today's video. But for those who really want to go deep in learning about this new ecosystem, then all the links are there for you actually to read about what Move is and what it does. But that's my too long don't read. I think it's very impressive based on what I can see. Now, there is caveats and there's negatives that I'll get into at the end of the video, but I want to go through the facts, the factual data first. Obviously, some of this comes across as slightly bullish, but I'll be objective at the end in terms of where this fits into the overall L1 landscape. We need to verify first what this actually does and what we're looking at here, though, before we decide any of that. So Aptos itself is a high throughput and high performance blockchain. It has a theoretical limit of 160,000 transactions per second. Now, a theoretical limit comes with the caveat that this is only on testnet. It's not on mainnet. When they launch, there will be limitations. They won't scale to 160 straight away. Of course, no blockchain does. But that theoretical limit does put it in the top 3 blockchains by TPS. It basically makes it the fastest blockchain in crypto, or at least, I know there's a lot of blockchains claiming to be that, but it puts it in the upper echelon of this, obviously close to your Solanas, close to other projects. Even Cadena is very fast. Phantom, extremely fast. They have a goal of 300,000 transactions per second. Aptos has 160. So different projects have different TPS goals, but this is proven that Aptos can handle 160,000 transactions per second if you take their consensus mechanism and plot it on by the number of threads, which we can see below. This graph outlines how it will actually scale to 160,000 transactions using block STM. Now, I'm not going to get too technical because I know not all of you are developers, but it uses a block STM execution method in order to actually scale in a parallel sense. So the issue right now is a lot of chains use linear consensus, which means they use sequential execution of each transaction, which means each transaction stacks one after another in a sequential form. What they are doing is they're bypassing this. They've kind of looked at a lot of other ones and said that that's an issue in terms of its scalability. So let's go for a different execution method, which is a memory parallel execution engine. Now, this kind of unlocks the door for scaling that we haven't really seen before, a different type of scaling in crypto. It's actually a type of scaling that Solana wants to implement. So technically we have seen it before, but it's very unique for a new blockchain to launch like this. And block STM performance, at least in theory, should be very, very strong. And we did see the team actually test this over a weekend where they said they minted millions of transactions just in one weekend. And in fact, in under an hour. They said they did like 2 million transactions in under an hour on testnet, which is like unheard of, basically. 2 million NFT mints, which is like a not an easy transaction. Like if you're just swapping an asset or sending it to a friend, it's a little bit easier for the blockchain. But 1 million NFT mints in an hour is pretty impressive. And we'll get to that in a second in terms of its capability in terms of NFTs and blockchain. But the TLDR on this tech is that it's high throughput, high efficiency. Now, I said that the Solana team was actually backing this or was a fan of this, and Anatoly, who's the founder of Solana, the co-founder of Solana, said parallelizable execution environments are going to eat up all transactions. He guesses, and I do really respect Anatoly's take, his guess is that within 5 years, they will handle 99% of the transactions. 99% of all transactions he thinks will be handled by parallelizable execution environments, of which the Sui blockchain utilizes, and of which the Aptos blockchain, the blockchain I'm talking today, utilizes. Now, if this is true, they are definitely on the right path to scalability. This is made possible by Move. So this programming language I talked to you about before, this is what is powering all of this innovation. It would not be possible without Move, which obviously would not be possible without the development that took place on Facebook between 2020 and 2022. That is why these projects are getting such ridiculous backing, because that was actually seen as quite a large breakthrough for crypto as a whole and for L1 technology as a whole. And that's the reason why it is gaining some steam, A, amongst the community, but two, mainly because it's still in its Series A round amongst VCs. Now, what actually happened was some of the other Solana members jumped ship. We saw Austin, who was actually the head of community and marketing at Solana, join Aptos Labs as the director of ecosystem. So it's certainly showing that it's good enough technology, or at least exciting enough. Maybe, the pay packet's big enough for Austin to actually jump from Solana over to the new blockchain Aptos. And as I said, it's so fast that the team minted millions of NFTs on testnet in under an hour just for fun. Very, very fun fact. But I think this makes the chain actually perfectly suited for blockchain, NFTs, and gaming. We know that's going to be a massive narrative in the future. I actually think a lot of the L1 future growth, considering it's such a competitive landscape, will be amongst the chain that can capitalize on the gaming trend. So any chain that can mint NFTs very quickly and efficiently, we know Solana is one of them. Hence why, honestly, long-term I'm bullish on Solana. Those chains will come out ahead in the end, I think, because that is a massive space that is going to prop up entire ecosystems. And we've already seen it through Solana's NFT ecosystem. That's why Sol is so strong. Do not fade NFT and gaming capabilities. Aptos approaches tech developments with user experience in mind. Now, this is the next point that I think is very relevant, because Aptos is taking a user experience approach. They are of the belief, and I actually share this belief, I've spoken about it many times on the show, that user experience needs significant improvement in terms of scalability and safety to reach the masses. I think UI is the major issue in terms of our lack of ability to onboard new users into Web3. If we want more users in Web3, if you want to retain users, you need better UI, you need a better user interface, and you need a more seamless experience. This underpins the entirety of the Aptos goal and the Aptos vision. This is what their main focus is. It's in many of the documents I read through, all the documents on the Medium. They keep going on about user experience, and that's for a reason. They want this competitive advantage through UI. Polkadot, for example, they launched parachain auctions. There were flaws with that. The development is starting to kick off on DOT, but the UI of DOT, at least for the best part of a year or two, has been awful. The UI of Near Protocol, which is a protocol, I like the tech with the sharding capability. The UI is pretty awful. Like, it's not the best blockchain to use. It's not the fastest. It's not the smoothest. This is something that Aptos is trying to do different, and this can be a major competitive advantage. I think the L1 space is definitely very congested. Obviously, there's much more protocols coming to the forefront here, but the one that has the best UI in the end will be the one that attracts retail users. And in the end, that will lead to the most growth. So obviously, there's a lot of caveats if they can actually land this competitive advantage. But their tech through Move facilitates more seamless UI integrations than other forms of technology would. meaning there are actually physical limitations to what other blockchains can do in terms of what they can display, in terms of the type of dApps they can create. Like that's a physical limitation based on its scalability and based on the way that the chain processes transactions. They claim, and obviously this is still claims until their white paper is out, which by the way has not launched yet, that they can offer a massive competitive advantage in the UI space. Now, obviously this is all well and good. We could talk for days about what they're going to do and what they're not going to do, but we want to see real development on chain. So this is the next major focal point. It's on-chain development. Now, there's a few major points when it comes to on-chain development. The first one is that they have an active DevNet, which allows coders to contribute open sourced code. Now, they already have a large team of developers developing on this. Let me just name a few. Coinbase, Binance, Anchorage, Blockerus, Livekeeper, Moonclave, Paxos, PayMagic, and Rarible. Already developing on DevNet. They claim that there's over 50 developers, major companies already developing on DevNet. There's already 8,000 developers on the Aptos Discord server, which right now is a bit of a hub for development. It's a very smart Discord server. I highly recommend joining. Apart from the people saying when airdrop, when launch, when token sale, the developers are actually quite active in there, and everyone really believes this move vision. And they already have 4,000 node operators from 40 countries. Now, keep in mind, Aptos does not even have a white paper yet. It just has Medium articles and a Discord and a few YouTube videos. But it already has 4,000 node operators from 40 countries. So this may have a path to decentralization. Obviously, in the end, that is a goal of an L1 to be not only fast and scalable, but decentralized. We don't want a centralized chain. Although the tokenomics may or may not be centralized with all these VC investments. We don't actually have the tokenomics schedule yet. You're getting this early to the point that I don't even know the tokenomics of the chain, which is why I can't comment on we're going to speculate in a minute on the price potential, but we can't speculate on the token until we have the tokenomics. But there are already 4,000 node operators from 40 countries. And in order to incentivize development, there is a grant program. They have not announced how much they're paying to developers to develop. I know it'll be a lot. If Near Protocol did $850 million, I know Aptos is going to be a lot. It's just a matter of when we get that announcement. Maybe even over the next couple months we'll get it. I know we're going to get it, but they do have a grant program. And I'm sure there'll be a little bit of buzz, a little bit of hype behind the chain when they actually announce this. Maybe they wait to announce the exact figure around the time of launch to generate hype. That's just one marketing strategy they can take that makes sense for me. We know development's very important. Talk about this all the time. The flow of funds from capital to developers to users to transactions to TVL to price. The developers is the major component of this. Good dApps are the only way that a chain can accrue users. The more developers a chain has, the more chance, the wider the fishnet of actually creating good dApps. And obviously, that does attract users to come on chain. That increases transaction volume massively. So we want to see good development, but what development are we actually seeing? What is tangible? Well, there are already a few major applications which are starting to be created on Aptos. There was a really good thread by Jay Bhavnani, and he put out 5 major sectors that Aptos is working on. And I'll go through these protocols really quickly because I'll let you read more about them on my Twitter. There's a stablecoin from Tala Labs, building a stablecoin on Move. There is a DEX on Aptos, which is offering volatile Uniswap style and curve asset swaps. You can read all about it in the documents. There's a wallet, a Martian wallet, that is being created. And this is actually cool. You actually get to see the chain in action. This is Aptos. This is the wallet. Enter the amount, enter the address. This is it's a Google Chrome extension like MetaMask. Confirm and send. Pretty seamless. Pretty small transaction fees right now, but no one's using the network. Sent instantly. Should be very fast and seamless. As I said, UI is one of their major focuses. That is that wallet in action. That'll be one of the major wallets, which will be a MetaMask-style Chrome extension. Money market via Vile. Borrowing, supply. Very important. Borrowing and lending basically underpins entire DeFi ecosystems. This will be a very essential dApp once it's launched, once it's fleshed out. I'm assuming it'll be similar to like Aave. It'll have governance. They might even do like a curved style thing. I know that the major DEX, Pontum, is going to be offering curve style asset swaps. So they'll have stable asset pools, and Uniswap will offer the volatile asset swaps. And then we have the Oracle switchboard with the full expectation that Chainlink also comes on board. So the development's very active. We can also see just one more thing on the development before we get to the meat of this video, which is the funding. It's this. There's already over 100 applications. I had to look through the documents. The team says there's already 100 dApps being built, and there's 30 that we currently know of, and we have the names of, And they're all linked here in my thread. All of them, you can click on all of them, check them out. They're going with like a space theme. Their goal is to be quite tight in terms of their UI. Their goal is to look nice, present nice, and overall, considering how new this chain is, there's quite a lot of development happening in the background. A lot more development than I thought when I first started researching the chain. I kind of thought, just another L1, like how they're going to gain traction. But then I started to look into it, and I noticed there's a lot more development happening than I originally thought. So if there's a lot of development, we need to look into the backers. Because at the end of the day, VC funding is one of the most important constituents of success when it comes to L1s, when it comes to any project for that matter, but specifically L1s, because they need a lot of funding. There's marketing expenses, there's development, which is a major cost. Obviously, incentives programs help attract new developers. Obviously, they're going to need to raise quite a lot of capital to fully realize their true vision, and that is exactly what they did. So let's go through the 2 funding rounds they've done so far and look at some of the backers to see who actually has a vested interest here, because these guys aren't small fish. We know they have a vested interest. We know they want to make money. We know some of them aren't afraid to dump on retail. So we want to look into who's actually investing. The first one is Multicoin. They raised $200 million in March. $200 million in March in their first funding round. A16Z, Andreessen Horowitz, they were the first investor. They led the first funding round. $200 million, they led the round. A16, one of the biggest, most famous, I just followed them, most famous hedge funds in the software world, in the tech world, in the crypto world, actually led the round. Multicoin Capital came second. Their biggest hit, Multicoin, was Solana. They were one of the original investors in Solana. They invested in this new chain. Coinbase invested. Obviously, we all know who Coinbase is. Coinbase Ventures, very active. They invest in a lot of projects. They backed it. 3AC, I mean, look, this is kind of funny in hindsight, that 3AC is getting allocation. But at the time, they were like the 3rd biggest VC. So obviously they invested. But I mean, take that one with a massive grain. Hold on. There's no shilling here. I don't own a single token. I have no financial interest in this coin. I'm just like you guys. I have 0 tokens. I haven't even spoken to the team yet. I honestly would like to get more information on the project, but I haven't spoken to the team yet. I haven't uttered a word in the Discord beyond just looking at it, and I have not received a single dollar. So there's no shill. I'm giving you guys the information just as I've received it, and that is exactly why I make these videos. I'm doing deep dives quite regularly now. This is a new format I'm trying. I'm going to be doing deep dives once a week, or once every couple of weeks, depending on when they come across my desk. And part of these deep dives is looking at projects I've never looked before. And I will 100%, in fact, I'm going to make this a rule now. If I own a project, I will disclose if I own any tokens. If I invest in Aptos, I will disclose that to you. Whenever I do a deep dive, I will disclose that 100% to you. I believe in transparency. No, I don't own any Aptos or Sui. Let's just continue because the shilling comments are very misguided. Okay. Includes major investments from Coinbase, 3AC, Tiger Global, and FTX. Now, we can just look at the backers list. This is massive. Has some of the biggest backers in crypto. Very hard to deny at this point. Very, very, very hard to deny the backers that they've got going on here. But then, that's not all. They just announced their Series A funding round. Now, Series A was an additional $150 million, which, the thumbnail of this video, as you guys know, FTX actually led. So we had A16 leading the first funding round. The second funding round, FTX actually led the round of $150 million. Now, they were involved in the first round too, so they'd already invested. They dipped their toes in, but then they decided round 2, we want to lead this. We need some cash here, or we want to deploy some cash here. We want to write some checks. Sam already wrote a massive check for Sui, multi-$100 million check for Sui on Move. He's done the same thing with Aptos. He's presumably invested over $100 million. We don't see the exact amount they invested. We know it's a $350 million raise. You can kind of do the math on how much of FTX that actually is. But they led the round with Jump Crypto, another major VC. Jump, A16 got involved again, Multicoin got involved, and Circle jumped on board for this next round as well. So now we've got basically the most stacked VC list in crypto, which is kind of crazy to me. Like, this is a very, very crazy list of backers. It's honestly massive, and basically every major VC is investing in Move. And I think that's for a reason. I'll get into that in like 30 seconds. Just for comparison, Sol raised $25 million before launch compared to Aptos at $350 million. CoinMumba said, you make the math, because Hasaka Trade says, which post-major centralized exchange listing chart is Aptos more likely to emulate? Sol, which just rocketed, or ICP, which launched high and then dumped? I think there is definitely a case for this launch being like ICP, considering its very high valuation, still without any users. But by the time it launches, it will have more users, it'll have tangible dApps, and we'll have a lot more clarity on the tokenomics to make a better decision on how this is going to emulate upon launch. Whereas if it did take the Solana path, we know that could easily be like a 50 to 100x on launch. But the caveat is Sam didn't lead the funding round. Sam of Solana, he actually invested later on open market, which obviously once that hype started to build, that pumped the price a lot. Whereas a lot of these guys are already in from the original seed rounds here. Now, with big backers, with deep pockets, with an experienced team, with active ecosystem development, how does Aptos fit into the current layer 1 landscape? Well, let's consider the vesting interests at play, VC backing. Speaking of vested interest, I've got no vested interest, Greyman. I don't know why you keep commenting. I like Mars. I've been in the space long enough to know. I literally could not be more transparent as a content creator. Like, I'm literally one of the most transparent guys ever. I'll literally reveal every single token I hold and when I plan on investing because I don't care. Like, I have no vested interest to shield this at all. So, you can go away, bro. Firstly, let's consider the vested interests at play. So, FTX, Sam is making big bets on Sui and Aptos. I mean, he leaded funding rounds for both, so clearly he's a big believer in Move. He believes in the programming language. I would go so far as to say I believe in this too. I'm with Sam. I think it's great. I think there's a lot to prove. I think it's in its very early stage. We haven't seen tangible development actually launch on Move, but he's clearly making big bets. And this is my opinion on SBF. He's kind of leading crypto right now. So when he invests in something, we can't really zig when he zags. We can't really turn a blind eye. Now, you can because I guess he's a VC. He has access to a project before we do. So from should we buy this token or not perspective, we can zig, but I wouldn't ignore it when Sam's zigging. I wouldn't be zagging, and I wouldn't be zigging when Sam's zagging, basically. Because Sam knows something's up with this. He knows there's potential in this, or he wouldn't be putting in hundreds of millions of dollars. But I do think this has some implications for his other ventures. There was a valid point raised by Vance. He said, the launch of this chain could detract from the value capture of SBF's other tokens. He says, the fact CZ has a single token, BNB, is a huge advantage versus SBF. Personally, would rather bet on SBF, but it's increasingly hard to tell which token to buy as a proxy. Sol, Serum, FTT, Aptos, etc. I would 100% agree now. Sam has multiple vested interests. It used to be just Solana, then it was FTT, and then it was obviously Serum after Sol. Now it's Aptos and Sui. So he's got multiple vested interests. Does this hurt Solana's growth potential? I think it's a little bit of a stretch. I think the answer is probably no. But if you want to bet on Sam directly, as I know a lot of you want to do, and I know I want to do personally, we can't really pick the exact proxy to invest in Sam now. I said a month ago it was FTT. The revelation of some of these investments makes it a little trickier to directly get exposure to him. Now, the easiest way would just be FTT and Sol, and then maybe a little bit of Aptos and Sui once they launch. But it does become harder to bet on Sam versus BNB through CZ. Now, we know he has a vested interest. Capturing the upside now be a little more difficult. But where does Aptos actually fit in the competitive landscape? Because it's a massive competitive landscape of L1. So I think we have to discuss, where it actually slots in. Firstly, the flexibility, security, and interoperability of Move, I think, is massive. I actually really like Move as a programming language. Once again, I'm not a dev, but based on what I've heard, it's very good, and I think it does provide a huge advantage. So this is my thesis. If they can deliver on the tech with the heavy focus on UI, I think developers and users should both love Aptos. I think the increased competition amongst L1s is a good thing. I know that it seems like there's a new L1 every single day, but think about it this way. More L1s means more competition. More competition means increased innovation in Web3. More innovation in Web3 yields better dApps, better chains, better tech. Better tech, in the end, is better for the user. So at the end of the day, more competition amongst L1s from a user standpoint, from the growth and the innovation and the scope of Web3 standpoint, that is a very, very, very good thing. We want more L1s. We want Move to come in and try and disrupt Solidity. We want the EVM to be replaced through Phantom's virtual machine and potentially through this consensus mechanism, because We know how good innovation is for increasing competition in crypto. And that is exactly what we want as users. So I do think, although it makes the space slightly more difficult to navigate from an investment perspective, it certainly makes allocating towards specific L1s a little bit harder. A competitive environment is exactly what Web3 needs to progress. Now, will Aptos and Sui slot into this competitive environment? Very bullish overall when I read into it. My initial answer is yes. There's definitely room. I think L1 is not the biggest burning need in crypto right now. I think there are protocols which are more needed. Bridges, DEXs, better technology in terms of interoperability. I think there's many needs in crypto. I don't think more L1s is necessarily what we need, but long term, it probably is what we need, because it will get to a point in Web3 where there's too much demand for transactions and not enough scalable L1s. And we're kind of planning ahead for the future, because right now we don't need 50 chains, but one day we might, especially because Ethereum's path to scalability will be slow and long. We know the purge, the surge, the verge, the merge, all that's coming for Ethereum. You guys saw my thread, but that is still probably a 5-year process. And in the meantime, I think there is rooms, especially for these other chains, to not only gain market share, but also operate alongside Ethereum, which I think will still be the big winner long term, and Ethereum-related protocols like Matic. But there certainly will be room for other L1 ecosystems. Like, Apple doesn't just have a monopoly on every single phone, although they're the biggest. There's still Samsung. There's still Huawei. There's still other brands that are making phones. So similar with L1s, I think there will still be other L1s that are making and shipping a good product that's being used. Maybe it's not as much as Ethereum, but it doesn't mean that the price of those assets still can't go up. So I do think there is a need for L1s. It's not the most pressing need right now, but overall, competition in the L1 landscape is good overall for crypto. Does Sui and Aptos fit into this? Certainly, especially if they deliver on their promises. Just one caveat, we know that promises in crypto can be a little bit of a farce. Obviously, before Solana launched, they had massive promises of being the most fast and scalable blockchain, and to many ways they have fulfilled on that vision. But in the meantime, in the last 2 years of Solana being live on testnet, we have seen many problems with the chain that have resulted in instances of downtime. Now, without Solana being live for 2 years, we wouldn't know that they have downtime issues. Without Solana going live for 2 years, we wouldn't know that they needed to fix their consensus. So I think with Aptos and Sui, unless they can land a perfect piece of tech instantly, they're going to launch and there's going to be issues, and that is going to take time to actually iron out. Now, it hasn't hurt Solana's price to the point that it's completely degraded. Sol's price is still, obviously very strong. It's probably hurt it a little bit in terms of the community's trust, but a similar thing, can happen to Aptos and Move, where there are headwinds in the short term that are as a result of the chain going live. And the only way we know that is once the chain goes live. So how can you invest? Because you probably want to invest. I know a lot of you are saying, I want to FOMO in. I don't have the answer that you want in today's video, because the answer is that their ICO, their initial token launch, has not taken place yet. It will likely take place towards the end of the year or early next year. I'm kind of thinking 2023. The reason I'm giving it to you guys now, 6 months early, is because it's time to start prepping and having a think about L1s, having a think about L1 allocations in your portfolio. The earlier we can have a think about where we're allocating, the better. I'm kind of shifting a little bit away from having so much concentration to L1s in my portfolio. I certainly have a lot, but if you discard Ethereum, I don't want my whole portfolio of L1s. I want bridges. I want interoperability plays. I want DEXs. I want smart AMMs that are building, and I want developers that are shipping interesting and innovative code. I want games. I want NFT projects. I want NFT borrowing and lending and staking platforms. So I'm not just going after L1s in my portfolio, although they're inevitably going to constitute a large percentage. I do think it's important to diversify, and it's important to keep note that if Move does succeed, it could potentially boot a couple of L1s out. It could hurt the adoption of a particular protocol. So I wouldn't go all in on any L1. That's why I diversify. A lot of people were saying, oh, you used to talk about Phantom so much. Why don't you talk about it anymore? It's for that exact reason. I still own Phantom, but I'm just not comfortable owning a large percentage with so much competition in the space. And I could say the same about any other L1, even Solana, even DOT, even AVAX, even NEAR. Like, they all have benefits, but they all have negatives as well. And I guess the major underlying negative is that there is increased competition, which creates opportunities, but it also creates more difficulty when it comes to allocating towards assets. So you're onto this narrative early. You're on 6 months before it's actually launched, before the ICO. You can't get involved with the series funding round. Unfortunately, that is reserved for VCs. Not even I'm involved in the series funding round. Honestly, if they offered it to me, I would have taken it because I do really like Move, but that is not on the cards right now. So I'm not invested. I got no vested interest. And depending on how it launches and what price it launches at and what rank it launches at, I would be interested in opening a position. But we'll have plenty of time to cover this because I'll be covering this much more in the near future. Because I want to keep you guys updated as this progresses, as this narrative continues to develop, and as Move obviously starts to launch with more blockchains. Because I do think that it will launch on many other blockchains. Many other blockchains will launch on Move in the future. So that's the Aptos video. Smash a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. But I am going live on Instagram now because the charts are pumping. I want to get some entries, or at least talk about when to get entries. And my Instagram is where I do that now, because otherwise this live stream becomes 2 hours. And I think we should kind of migrate a little bit. So I'm just tweeting now, discussing my trading plan for August, which sounds tricky, live on Instagram. Also following back a few people that join. I just tweeted the link. Tweet was sent. And I'm going live right now on Instagram, so you guys can catch me over there in like 20 seconds. And yeah, we'll take the discussion over there, and we'll talk about the charts, and we'll get into trades, and we'll have a lot of fun, and I'll answer any questions, because I know a lot of you guys have questions over like what Aptos is, if you can invest, what you think of this L1. So I will answer those questions if you want to ask on my Instagram. But yeah, I'll catch you over there. Link in the description, obviously, to the Instagram. And I will see you back on YouTube tomorrow at the same time. So yeah, catch you in a little bit. Peace out.